So with Gamescom 2019 fast approaching, we have the news that Capcom will be announcing some of its future game titles. Also, with the sudden surge of news of Resident Evil Ambassador, a lot of RE fans have speculated that we may be seeing Resident Evil 3 Remake very soon, which I'm super hyped about. Anyways, what's up you guys, this is DeVuH, and in this video we'll be discussing how Resident Evil 3 Remake could learn from Resident Evil 2 Remake, because as fantastic of a game RE2 Remake was, it still had its flaws. So with RE3 Remake, Capcom could take advantage and use some experiences from Resident Evil 2 and make the best Resident Evil 3 possible, where we can see an improvement on the story, adding more in-depth character backgrounds, and adding much more to the replay value of the game. Anyways, before we get started, please don't forget to smash that like and subscribe button, and maybe also sharing this video with a friend or any other social media outlets out there. Alright, so let's start off with RE2 Remake and discuss some of its flaws in the story and character building, and how RE3 Remake can take notes from this.
Your ass again!
So Resident Evil 2 started very similar to the classic version, having both Claire Redfield and Leon Kennedy making their way to Raccoon City. With their general story arc hasn't really changed much, but this is where maybe they could have added a bit more depth to both characters. Maybe they could have shown more of the cutscenes on why Leon was late to arrive at Raccoon City, or maybe giving us a background on Claire and her relationship with her brother Chris Redfield. Also, this character building should have been explored with all the different characters in this game as well, especially including Kendo and his daughter, because besides a quick cutscene with them, our interactions with them were very short, almost making you feel like their presence wasn't truly impactful.
Just go. Just give us some privacy.
So how can Resident Evil 3 Remake story take notes from this aspect? Because they can start off with Jill Valentine's life after the Spencer Mansion incident in Resident Evil 1, and how she's been coping in Raccoon City while having the area slowly infected with the T-virus. Because can you imagine if we could delve into her mindset during the prologue, and maybe adding more to her mental state, showing PTSD flashbacks of her trauma in RE1.
That was too close. You were almost a Jill sandwich.
You're right!
Also, they can explain why she decided to stay behind in Raccoon City, and have Chris go to Europe on his own to take down Umbrella. This would give us players a solid background to her storyline in RE3 Remake, giving us an incentive to be more invested in her escape during the game. Anyways, talking about the story, Resident Evil 2 Remake did implement the A and B scenario, adding a bit more replay value to the game. But the problem that a lot of RE fans thought though, was the lack of additions to cutscenes and changes to the story, not really giving us much of a different experience between the two scenarios, which was a bit disappointing, considering that the classic RE2's B scenario explains certain story elements that added more depth from our first playthrough. With the biggest example of this was a helicopter crash that happened near Chief Irons' office. So Resident Evil 3 Remake could add more to the story depth by having us use Jill with her own campaign, but also maybe having Carlos have his own story arc and explain the events from his perspective, maybe explaining his objectives prior to arriving at Raccoon City, showing us what Umbrella's real motives were, and certain characters like Nikolai could be explored upon, showing how he was tasked to retrieve the remaining data from Raccoon City's Umbrella headquarters, eliminating any loose ends that may implicate Umbrella to the T-virus incident, because not only will this add to the replay value, but this will add more to the lore. Also, another thing that RE3 Remake could learn from Resident Evil 2 is adding more cutscenes to the game, especially the ending, because we all remember how amazing it was watching the true ending from the classic RE2, as we sit back and relax and enjoy the payoff to all the hard work we had to do to finally make it to that point in the game. Because from what I remember, RE3 didn't really have that long of an ending, though it was impactful to see Raccoon City destroyed.
It's the end.
But maybe they could add more by showing us different endings, depending on how we rank or the choices we make during our gameplay, similar like when we're dealt with a situation where we had to choose whether to fight Nemesis or not. So depending on our choices and how we handle them, this game would put us in a different path and rank based on our time and our completion of certain objectives.
That's it. Umbrella's going down.
Anyways, let's move on and talk about fighting the BOWs in the game, which I would hope that Resident Evil 3 Remake brings back all the monsters from the classic game, because RE2 Remake did omit certain monsters, which had me question why they did that in the first place, because one integral zombie that they didn't show was Brad Vickers at the RPD station's entrance, because with the plot of RE3, we all knew Brad was killed by Nemesis and would turn into a zombie, so when Leon or Claire arrived at the police station, it would show the continuation of the storyline. Also, quick side note for those of you who didn't know, Resident Evil 3 happens a day before and a day after Resident Evil 2. Anyways, in the end, the possibility of Resident Evil 3 Remake being announced at Gamescom 2019 is an exciting thought, because it lets us Resident Evil fans come up with certain ideas that could be implemented in the actual game, especially with the community feedback survey that we did after the release of Resident Evil 2 Remake. So I can tell Capcom has been listening, and for all we know, the feedback from the survey will give us the best possible version of Resident Evil 3 Remake. Anyways, what are your guys' thoughts? Do you guys agree with some of the additions that I mentioned in this video? Or is there more you guys would like to see from RE3 Remake? If there is, please let me know in the comment section down below. And also, if you guys enjoyed the content, please feel free to hit that notification bell icon so you guys can be alerted when I upload more Resident Evil content in the future. Anyways, thank you guys so much, and as always, you guys have a great rest of your day, and this is Hey DeVuH, signing out.